you're struggling with mental illness and you're depressed and your finances are crushing your spirit and your soul and you don't want to get up, I'm here to tell you, it will pass. It will pass. I'm here. It passed for me, and it may be cyclical, but I think it'll pass and it'll get better. Hang on, reach out. It'll get better. So on single player FI, it's going to be tougher. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It might take a little bit longer. Your pace is your pace. Do not compare your journey with someone else. Please don't. It's the comparison and finding yourself lacking that will drive you nuts. But here are the things that I would urge you to consider. How can you increase your income? How can you economize? And what are you willing to economize on? Because the pursuit of FI is not about deprivation.
That's actually so appropriate for our community of late starters because we feel alone.
Yeah.
We don't know how we're going to get up in the morning. We don't know how we're going to fix our finances. We don't know what it's done to our lives. And to ask for help,
so hard.
To ask for therapy, to ask others to help surround you and support you and lift you up is huge. Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Becky, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your hosts. We're here to help you with your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting from.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. I'm your host, Bill Yount. Becky is living her best life in Bali at the moment. I'm back at the ranch in Knoxville, Tennessee, where we just had our first local Catching Up to FI meetup. We encourage you, too, to get a group together in your local area. Buy some t-shirts on the website shop and take a picture and post it in the Facebook group. We would greatly appreciate it if you are finding value in this podcast in our community, if you would, quote, buy me a coffee, end quote, and help us defray the startup costs associated with this show and platform. You can do so by going to the website at catchinguptofi.com and click the Support Us link on the homepage. Well, let's dive in. Today's surprise co-host is my friend and yours, Cummings Koski. She's an alleged retiree in her late 40s from the corporate world and reinvented herself as a certified financial planner and passionate financial literacy advocate. You can hear her story on episode 7 of this podcast, From Poverty to Wealth and Early Retirement. She has authored the book Money Letters to My Daughter and is presently writing another very exciting book. She loves $2 bills and gives them away to folks on their journey to FI. I am the proud recipient of one of these $2 bills, and it sits here on my desk today. All right. So, Jackie, how are you doing?
I'm glad you still have that $2 bill. That makes me feel great. And yeah, you see here in my office, I got that uncut sheet of 20, I think, $2 bills. So I'm still a big nerd when it comes to $2 bills. And that was the first way I learned how to save. So that's why they're real special to me.
Well, we met at Economy Conference back in 2019, and you gave me one of those, and it's an inspiration to me on my FI journey, as it is for anybody who's fortunate enough to get one of your $2 bills. You're a generous person, and we're really happy that you're here with us today. Guess what? Our guest today is our friend Jennifer Ma. I first met Jen at a party for the ChooseFI International Foundation at FinCon 19 in Washington, D.C. She is a uber FI enthusiast, and you can find her wit and wisdom all over many FI social media channels. She's an administrator of the Afford Anything Facebook group. She's active in the ChooseFI community, both locally and worldwide. She is also to be found in the Women's Personal Finance Facebook group. Her home base is in the San Diego area, where she is an entrepreneurial financial coach at Your Money, Your Life Financial Coaching. Her services are designed to reduce anxiety and stress and help people take control of their money and empower them to build the life that they want. She provides you with all the tools we need to succeed. Jen's personal and money stories are moving, to say the least. Today we explore the intersection of personal and financial trauma and inspirational resilience. Please be aware that some of the topics we discuss today may be a bit triggering. It is with great pleasure that we welcome Jen to the Catching Up to Fi family. What's up, Jen?
Hey, not much. It's good to see your face. Oh my God, Jackie,
I'm
Bill.
so glad. It's like one big happy family. We're so happy to have you today, and I get to be a part of it.
I get to be part of your day. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, this is just incredible. And this is the highlight of my month, probably. So
Aw.
just wanted to warn you.
Well, I can actually credit Jen with helping me overcome imposter syndrome in starting this show. We were on a call years ago. This has been a little twinkle in my eye for years. And I think, oh, I'll never be able to do it. I'll never be able to do it. And here we are, 40 some odd episodes in, on track for 250,000 downloads in the first year. It's unbelievable. I can't believe that this little thing has turned into something in the Fi
And
community.
you did it.
Anyway,
You
Jen,
did it.
we're not here to talk about. Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying,
Well,
you
thank
did
you.
it. It doesn't matter what conversation we had, but you did it, Bill. And I just want to acknowledge
Well, I
that.
did it with Becky. I needed an accountability partner. And like I said, Becky is not here. She's traveling the world in Bali today, but I'm sure she wishes she was to chat with you. Jackie is an excellent stand in and was an excellent guest. So let's just dive into your story,
Sure.
Jen. In order to understand you, we first need to hear a bit about your personal journey.
Oh,
It wasn't easy growing up for you. Can you talk about that?
yeah. When I'm Chinese American, I was born in the US and I'm the youngest in the family. My mother immigrated here and I was very lucky. I didn't have any control over this, but I was born here, whereas the rest of my family, my nuclear family, were born abroad. And so I grew up on welfare, in poverty. We didn't have a lot. We didn't have a luxurious lifestyle. And so I learned money habits from her. And at the same time, there was just a lot of pain growing up. And I had to survive a lot of things. And it's incredibly interesting as you go through therapy and exploration of self growth and self realization, all the things that you picked up in your childhood and the people around you that frame your perspective of life, yourself, your place in this world, and also affect your money sense, your money operations. How your operating system is, like what I like to call it, your money operating system. What is that? And so there were a lot of things like that. And so I went to school and homemade clothes, and people made fun of me because I was different. I didn't wear trendy items. My mother didn't want me to wear glasses because she thought I was vain, and all I wanted to do was see the board. And I'm pretty sure she had undiagnosed mental stress. And in kindness now, because we were estranged, I chose to not live with her after the age of 12 on a permanent basis. And I was lucky that my aunt and uncle took me in and provided a place for me to live. My sister passed away from suicide, and there's a whole bunch of issues with that. But I got to stay with my aunt and uncle. And while it wasn't the most perfect household for me to be in, and nor did I feel 100% welcome, I can say honestly that it was an enriching experience. And it was a calculative move at 12 to choose to stay there because it gave me opportunities that I recognized that I wouldn't have if I had gone back to live with my mother. And it's painful to say. And she passed away from COVID in December of 2020. And in my mind, I have forgiven and let her go because I think, just like all of us, she did the best that she could with the tools and the awareness that she had at that time. And it wasn't a personal thing against me. And I don't want to resent her. I don't want to be angry. And I can rail at my past, but really all that's going to do is cause more pain. You know, that saying about, like, if you hold a sword by is it hurting you or the other person? It's a dual-edged sword, right? You can be hurting your own hand. And I don't know if that makes sense. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast, so this is probably rambling. But anyway, so I grew up on AFDC, welfare, and I knew that I was going to have to be a scholarship kid. I didn't have money. I contributed to my living expenses. I worked full time. I did a whole slew of activities at school and really focused on my curriculum vitae, if you will, to try and get into college and all sorts of stuff. So, but there was this driving need, and now I recognize that it's from trauma, to be fiercely independent and not have to rely on anyone, because my history has been that I couldn't rely on anyone because I grew up in that emotionally and a physically abusive household and was a victim of sexual abuse as a child as well. And so it was a completely unsafe environment for me. And by electing to move to my aunt says that what I did was I threatened that if they made me go back to live with my mom, that I would run away and just survive on my own on the streets. And I don't recall that conversation. My memory is that I asked and said, I would like to stay here. Here's why. And my goal was to shrink myself and be the least problematic child going through her household. But the blessing on that is that I grew up in an extended family. I had my grandmother, my aunts and uncles, different generations. And it was lovely in that sense. And I got a very close relationship with my grandmother, whom I adored. So that's my childhood.
Jen, that's an
Uh,
amazing story. And I think that's one thing I really love about you, that you're so open and willing to share. A lot of the things that you mentioned, that's some hard stuff. That is some hard stuff. And I guess, how did you manage to sort of get through that? It sounded like your extended family had a lot to do with it.
well, okay, so I have to say that when I was little, and I still am an avid reader, and I read a lot of romantic literature about Le Morte d'Arthur. I think I read through most of the elementary school library by the second grade, right? And the librarians were kind to me in the city library and let me take out huge books. So I had this whole idea of like honor and integrity and strength and stoicism. And I have to be honest, I created coping mechanisms that eventually failed me. Here is how I'm going to operate my life. I'm going to have integrity with my word. My word is my bond. I have nothing else to give anyone else in the world. I'm going to treat people this way. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to defend other people who are weak. And after the death of my sister, I felt very ostracized by my local community, my Chinese community, because there would be kids like pointing at me saying, oh, you can't talk to her. Her sister killed herself. And that could be catching, I guess. And mental health during that time frame wasn't discussed very openly. I mean, it was a shame. And we are all people who want to be perceived well, and we don't want to have weakness. And so I didn't disclose any of this. In fact, I kept a lot of this internal working to myself as I struggled to create mechanisms that supported me. And I was blessed because I had teachers who had faith in me. I had other adults that took an interest in my life. And that is where, when I talk about being an autodidact or self-made, I'm not really self-made, because without the interest and support of other people in my life or inspiration from reading a book, I'm not sure that I could have survived my childhood. And so those coping mechanisms that I taught myself to be strong and independent and invincible and all this fell apart. And that point, I turned to my aunt and uncle and I said, I'd really like to see a counselor. Thank you. I'm at my end. And they got me into counseling. And I did that for a few years because I had that self-realization that this was no longer working. And this is not who I want to be. I don't want to be filled with anger. I don't want to feel defensive in the world, because as many walls as you put up to keep the world away and feel safe, they're also keeping the thing that means the most to me, which is people, out. And so there's that war and that struggle internally.
That's actually so appropriate for our community of late starters because we feel alone.
Yeah.
We don't know how we're going to get up in the morning. We don't know how we're going to fix our finances. We don't know what it's done to our lives. And to ask for help,
So
to
hard.
ask for therapy, to ask others to help surround you and support you and lift you up is huge.
It's a risk
Absolutely
because
huge.
it's rejection, because there's already this internal dialogue like, here are all the things that have happened. And obviously, maybe I was lacking, or I wasn't lovable, I wasn't good enough. What's going on? And then there's this whole societal expectation that you're an adult and you're perfect, that you should know what you're doing, when most of us are just trying to figure it out along the way and be the best person that we can be. And I know what that's like. One of the reasons why I'm open, and Jackie, thank you for complimenting me on that, is because I think hiding all of this in darkness breeds more shame, breeds more isolation. It doesn't help the whole population lift up. Because whether or not you've had extreme emotional and financial distress, you've had some sort of stress. You've had some sort of emotional or perhaps a mental health issue, or someone you love has. And so I don't want us to be ashamed. And that's why I'm okay with talking about my failures, the importance of community and people around you, and seeking out help. Because if we're not able to face that on our own, and you're not alone, then find other people who've been there, who are empathetic and supportive. And that's why your community, Bill, it rocks. Let's get us, all the late starters, together. Let us lift each other up, achieve our goals. Our timelines are going to be different. The challenges we face may be different. And maybe the stories that we share on this podcast aren't directly related to you or relevant, but there might be aspects of all of our stories that you can pull this one gem away and apply it to your life. So my family, my aunt and uncle my aunt was not as opposed to the mental health therapy thing. And so she got me into the treatment. And I think that helped me survive my childhood, because I'm sure I would have also died by that end. In fact, my milestones have been like, I survived until I was 19. Oh my God, who knew I was going to last this long? And now I look back from my venerable Gen X age and I'm like, oh my God, that's so young, so young. That 19 was when my sister died. And I thought, and I'm competitive. I'm type A. I'm recovering type A. Honestly, I am recovering type A. And my competition is internal. I just wanted to make sure that I stayed as long as she did. And I had I miss her still to this day and wonder what our lives would have been like and what she would have been like as an adult. So if you're struggling with mental illness and you're depressed and your finances are crushing your spirit and your soul and you don't want to get up, I'm here to tell you it will pass. It will pass. I'm here. It passed for me. And it may be cyclical, but I think it'll pass and it'll get better. Hang on, reach out. It'll get better. Sorry, I just totally derailed
No,
us.
incredibly, incredibly courageous of you, Jan, to have gotten through that as a child. I can only imagine how that felt with your sister and all the other things that you had to deal with. That is incredibly difficult for a young person, and then to be able to find resources or recognize that, hey, I do need counseling. Like I'm just blown away listening to you, and every time I hear you talk about your childhood and some of the things you had to deal with, it just draws me in. You have such a soothing, sincere voice, and it just makes you want to kind of close your eyes and think about what you're saying and what a big deal it is on the other side too. And by the way, you said your mom passed away in 2020. I didn't know that, so I'm very sorry to hear about your mom and that you lost her. That must have been difficult as well.
That was because it's like looking at that, Jackie, and thinking, while we were estranged and I hadn't had a relationship, I tried for years, despite the willful, conscious decision not to live with her. I still wanted to maintain ties because being a good Chinese daughter,
Right.
I was not being a good Chinese daughter. That struggle of what your identity and role is, right? So I wound up, or even struggle of just being a good daughter. I always thought maybe we can reconcile in the future. And with her passing, that really took it off the table. And really weird, despite the fact that she was abusive and there was so much pain wrapped around her existence in my life, I grieved for the fact that we will never be able to redevelop and establish a relationship that would be healthy, that had boundaries, that I could invite her back in my life in a safe way.
Yeah. And
Uh,
even at that age, you still holding out hope. I totally get that. No matter what, she was your mom, and then there's in your culture, it sounds like even more so. There were some things that you had to deal with based on that. How much do you think your culture, your Chinese culture, played into what was going on when you were younger, dealing with the mental illness with your mom?
oh, probably a lot. in the sense that there was a study at one point back in the 80s, 90s, whatever, that basically showed that the least likely population in the US to seek out mental health services were Asian Americans. And
Really? Did you know that,
you know
Bill?
that the,
I didn't know
yes,
that.
No, I
I
didn't.
mean, I can pull up stats from NAMI and some other things if you'd like at some point, but I remember reading about that, and it's understood
Right.
because one, these are all personal shame. You must, to the outside world, how many of us show up every day as if nothing is going on in our lives? There are people out here in the world who are functioning, holding on with tight grip, functioning, trying to appear that there's nothing in their personal lives or internally that is painful or what they're going through. So I'm so well aware of that because in the Chinese culture, and actually a lot of Asian cultures, we talk about saving face. So it mattered to my mother and the culture that we always presented like we were the perfect family. Like she would pull me into her friend circle and sort of do a dog and pony show. Like, here's my trick rabbit who can do all these following tricks, right? Or the pony that can trot at this mile per hour or jump over these hurdles. But really, it was all a show. And it's not to say that she didn't love me. I think she did. Again, she did the best that she could. I have to believe that with the tools and the knowledge she had. And as an immigrant who didn't speak the language, who mental health is not something, we didn't have any Asian American or Chinese mental health practitioners. And if they were hiding under rocks, because that's why representation matters, right? When you see somebody else that looks a little bit like you, Jackie, or like me or Bill, seeking and doing something that we never thought of doing, or they're working in a field, we're like, oh, that becomes much more acceptable, right? So now I think that we look at psychology and therapy, and when I see the multiculturalism, there should be more. There should be more, because I'm not saying that I can only see a Chinese American therapist, and I didn't. I'll be honest. The first person I saw was a white, cisgendered, heterosexual male. And I still credit him with saving my life at that young age and providing me some other tool set to have me survive, to have me process my emotions. So it's all about saving face. We can't talk about the shame. I couldn't, and I still internalize that, Jackie.
Wow.
I still internalize that because I was also sexually assaulted in college. That was not fun and spiraled me into another depressive state. But we overcome and we survive, and I'm still here, and I still refuse to allow that to jade my belief in real love and the goodness of people in general. And so, but I found someone I loved and I got married, and I thought we were really doing well. We had car debt and student loan debt and some other stuff going on, but I thought we were really doing well. And we bought a house, and I reinvented myself in 2 different careers. And then he decided to leave the military, and he said, I don't want to stay in the military. It was that 10-year mark, either fish or cut bait. And so he wanted to leave, and he told me what his game plan was. And I said, sure, I think based on the budget, I can support us. We may have to cut some things back. And if you don't mind, you might have to take a part-time job slinging hash or Starbucks or something. But I think we can swing this. And turns out he quit his job and we couldn't swing it. I'm working. He's taking part-time classes, and the bills are just going up and up and up, and we're charging things to credit card, and it becomes feeling really pressure and overwhelming. And I started resenting him, and resentment blocks love. Resentment blocks love. And because I would go to him and I said, hey, you remember you said you'd go to McDonald's or Starbucks? I could really use that, and here's why. He refused to. And then I said, look, if you don't want to do that, how about let's go for scholarships? I'll help you write your essays. I'll help you review them. We can apply them together. He never did any of that. And there are 2 great gifts he gave me. One is that he gifted me with a membership to Navy Federal Credit Union. And 2, he turned me down when I gave him student loan paperwork.
Wow.
I said, I'll co-sign this for you. And we even went to marital counseling. And his stance was that I should just have faith in him, that this was all going to work out, even as the numbers continue to climb in our credit cards. And I was feeling crushed by this. So what wound up happening is I got laid off. I got laid. And I,
Oh my goodness.
so no, and here's the irony. This is where the power struggle becomes real. Like, so here I am working my ass off.
Your story, if I may interrupt for just a second, I am shedding tears here inside. And it's just an overwhelming amount of personal trauma. I mean, everybody in our community has suffered trauma, whether we recognize it or not. And you survived this. We're all in our 50s. I'm a white American, you're a black American, you're a Chinese American. And here we sit together, coming together to talk about recovery from trauma, both personal, and now we're starting to hear about your financial trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Let's shift this discussion a little bit to the money side of your trauma and take us through what you did or didn't know, how you learned or didn't learn, and move us up to the point where you woke up.
Oh, well, I was struggling waking up during that marriage, but regardless which, so laid off, cashed out all my 401k and everything to support us. And then he got a job and we eventually wound up getting divorced. But by that time, I'd also reinvented myself in another career. And I have a whole slew of different kinds of fields I've worked in, partly out of curiosity and partly because I wanted to see what it looked like. And I felt like there was a place for growth. I would say that the first eye-opening experiment was when we were divorcing and I asked if we could mediate this. And so I sat down and I looked at our debt. And after the divorce, one of the things I really wanted to do was keep the house. Keep in mind, I was fully disabled. The doctor wasn't going to release me. I didn't have a job when we separated. And I wanted to keep the house because there was so much change going on that I needed a foundation of security. And my awakening at that point is that money meant security for me. It meant safety and that I wanted a space to call my own. And those were all things that I wanted to do. So I got a job right away. I went through a whole series of layoffs. I set up a consultancy and then funded that consultancy with savings. And then my credit card, when the clients would fall off, delay payment, and then whatever. And it wound up resulting in the fact that I had to sell my home, the home that I negotiated to keep during my divorce. And I walked away thinking, I am the worst person ever. I failed at the American dream. I freaking lost the house. Isn't that part of the American dream? I should have a house. I should have 2.5 children or maybe dogs. I should be happily married. And there I am, just a freaking American failure. I just failed. And I was so embarrassed. And during the divorce and all of that situation, I was so depressed. I couldn't look at bills. I was barely getting out of bed. And yet I couldn't tell anyone that I was going through this. And in hindsight, when my friends hear this story, they think I'm insane that I never mention it to them. Again, still learning, still growing. I am there to help other people, and that's enculturated, I think, from my culture there. And I just couldn't bear to reach out and say the consultancy failed because automatically you're like, am I stupid? I must be stupid. But really, it's a lot of circumstance. And you don't know what you don't know until you start trying to do it. So I spiraled downward and I was really thinking I was worth more dead than alive, honestly. And that would help all of my family, my extended family, because I still felt beholden to them, that I should give them some monetary reward that I have been around, that I lived, that they gave me shelter or my mother didn't abort me. I just thought, oh my God, I'm worth more dead than alive. And the wake up call was when the last 2 notices of the house came. And I was like, holy crap, I need a place to live. I need security. What can I do? And I went to my family and I had a get well plan. Because here's the thing, when you hit rock bottom, there's still more places to go sometimes. And the rock bottom was this. I went to my family and I said, here's my get well plan. If you can loan me, I don't know, I think it was like $20,000. Here's how I'm going to pay you back. I'll go back into industry. I'll find a new job and then I'll make a payment. And here's the interest rate I'll pay you. I'm really good at contracts. And so everyone in my family said no. And again, so what's the lesson I learned from that? I need to figure this crap out by myself. I don't know who's going to help me. I don't have family. I've never had family give me a leg up. Like, here's the money. Even when I lived with my family, like the AFDC money that my aunt and uncle wound up getting, I never saw a cent of it. I mean, I'm sure it went to housing, clothing, or whatever, but I had this like little pipe dream in my head that they saved all that money up for me so that someday they'll say, congratulations for surviving. Here's a small check to get you started into adulthood. Never happened.
And
Never
Jen,
happened. You
it's
have,
so funny that you're saying that because it's like I'm thinking there's no better way to get your independence than to not have anyone to depend on. And it sounds like that's what was happening with
oh,
you. It's like no help over
oh,
here. That means I got to do it myself.
yeah. Well, I worked full time.
Yeah.
So I was an AP honors kid in high school, got all the units. I worked full time. I was a bookstore manager. I made deals. I bought books. It was a used bookstore. And all this stuff. And I couldn't afford all the AP tests. That's how poor I was. And my boss at the time would give me cash advances to allow me to do the extracurriculars. I did early, I made myself do horrible things like speech and debate. I was all part of the math team, the whole thing, right? And my boss at the time was really great. And he's long gone, and that bookstore no longer exists. And I'm very fond of him. Again, another kind soul in the world that just gave me a shot. And I'd been asking him for a job at that bookstore since I was like 8.
Wow.
Every time I came in, I'm like, because I would save every penny I had to buy a book, used book. I'm like, I have $1.50 of the 15,000 books that are in this used bookstore. Which ones can I buy? He was really great to me. And I would say that I earned my money and I learned to pay bills. My aunt and uncle gave me my first contract to read and sign. I paid interest. I sold my car to go to college. The whole thing, right? So here I am, still stuck in my stuff. I'm now I just turned 30. I was in my early 30s, turned depressed, and the house is gone. And I don't even know where I'm going to live. So then I turned to the same family and asked them, hey, you have that granny flat with the front bedroom, the sitting area, and the private bath. Can I pay you this monthly going rate for that room until I figure out where I'm going to live? And that same family said no.
Wow.
So what am I going to do? So I did the one ad. My credit score was down in the pits. I think it went from like 820 to like 500 overnight because of all the delays and payments. And I had to rebuild my credit. I was very lucky that the house had some equity. So I negotiated all my debt payoff with the credit cards. Now, would I say that that's a wonderful thing that I stake my pride on? No. I like to make it my obligation and then pay it. That would have been the ideal world, right? But I didn't have that kind of money. So I negotiated and had them do a payoff so that it was less and my credit tanked, right? And so I had to rebuild my credit. And then what wound up happening with that is that I was afraid I couldn't get a place to live. So if you're in this position, people, and you need a place to live, don't go to the big corporate organizations that have apartment buildings. Go to the private land homeowners, the private landlords who have like a small apartment that they want to rent a condo. They'll accept you. They accepted me. I showed them my bank statement. I was completely honest about what was happening in my life. And I offered to pay him several months in advance because I saved a little bit of money to try and restart. And I gave myself 2 years. It took me, actually, I didn't give myself that time. I needed that time to sort of rebuild my internal emotional storage system, my battery, to recharge and feel like I can face the world again after feeling so defeated. And that's what I did. So I took 2 years and wound up focusing on physical health and then wound up changing industries again. 2005,
How did you figure some of this stuff out? I'm thinking about the credit card thing that you did, what you did when you went to the private homeowner. I don't know if I would have known to do some of that stuff. Like, how did you figure some of that stuff out, especially coming out of everything that you had to deal with?
I'm going to say that I'm a really good researcher. I don't know everything in the world, Jackie, but you know the lovely thing is, if you want to find something, you have to look at the right questions. And for this reason, I still take in information that's not even relevant to my case, like things about children and 529s. I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews. And in case my friends need help, I still read those articles. I just read and I just absorb information and I want to help people. And I would love to be the oracle at Delphi where you come to me and say, How do we do this? And I believe knowledge is power, and we still don't know. And I think that for us, that desire to know more is just inherent, the curiosity. So what I wound up doing is that I went through a whole series of and Google was nascent at that stage, I believe. And I just did a little rudimentary search on the internet about rebuilding credit. So I got a secured credit card. I gave them $1,000 because that's all I could afford, because I was like, how am I going to pay this? Right. And then I took a part-time job just for health insurance. And you know how I know we're getting old? Health insurance.
Yeah, exactly.
In my 20s, I'd be like, I don't need health insurance. Let's just go ahead and rank up my rate, my salary or whatever, right? Now, I'm like, what's the benefit? And these people who are doing HSAs, great. I'm so glad you're doing HSA if it works for you. And Jackie, you are the queen of HSAs, woman.
Yeah, we'll have to have Jackie back on to give us a primer on HSAs, actually. And for full disclosure to our audience, we're all in our 50s now. I think I'm the granddaddy among all of us.
But he's daddy.
You know, we've all survived these tumultuous years. And in your 30s, it sounds like you'd had Armageddon. You'd had personal financial Armageddon. And you're still standing. It's like, you know, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, 15th round, hit for hit, and you're still standing. And at this point, it sounds like you paid off all of your debts with some home equity, and you're at net worth 0 or something like that in your mid-30s. Is that correct?
In my mid-30s, I think I had something like, I don't know, 5K. And I went back after you asked me about this whole thing, if I would be willing to talk about numbers. So for that health insurance, I took a job as a part-time department secretary at a mental health hospital. I revamped their newsletter. I tracked all their CEUs. I set up massive events for people to attend, right? And I thought it was really great that I was part of the mental health hospital, and it was part-time. And I made the lowest amount of money. I think I made just barely over minimum wage. But what it got me, health insurance. And that made me feel a little bit safe, and it had a little money coming in and bought me a little bandwidth to sort of figure out financially what that next step was. But when you are on the HSA thing, I want to say I have not elected an HSA. And the reason why, as much as we tout them in the FI community as that triple threat account, and I do not kid when I call Jackie the queen of, there are some personal circumstances that you need to look at. I know that I have some health conditions. I know they're expensive. If you know that you're going to have a pregnancy, maybe not for our crowd because maybe we're the older set that's going through FI, right? But if you know that you have a pregnancy or you're planning for children or you've got some health issues, an HSA might not be the right choice for you because devastation and the out-of-pocket max, it could be stressful. There is the ideal world where we're supposed to do X, Y, Z because this is the plan to reach FI, right? But at the same time, the reality is, maybe you need to balance that out because doing XYZ is going to stress you out. Taking an HSA for me would actually stress me out because I'm not going to go to the doctor. You know why? I've got to pull money out. I've got to be able to cash flow that puppy. So the only way I would do an HSA is if I were really healthy, 100% healthy. 2, if I knew that I could cash flow all the expenses and that money could sit there until I was ready to submit my receipts and start drawing down. Because that's the ideal
That's a
world.
very important point, Jen. And you're the type of person, and I feel like it's essential that does your own research and see how this applies to me. And me personally, I haven't been on an HSA plan for 4 years since I retired, just because the picture looks different now. So I was on it when it fit what I needed it to do. But you thought about, okay, how does this apply to me? If that's going to keep you from or make you hesitate going to the doctor, or you don't have the cash flow, you got to look at your situation. There's so much great information out there, but remember, there's only one you. And so I appreciate you saying that so much, because digging and doing your own research and seeing how things apply to you, that's the magic.
And having understanding about your own money operating system. Will you actually pull the money out and go see the doctor when it's necessary? And there have been studies that have shown, I think it was an NPR article that I read that even talked about doctors who had participated in the study of using HSAs who also neglected their health because they didn't want to pull out their money.
Well, actually, I'm raising my hand here
Bill, confession.
because I'm one of those doctors that tends to neglect his health because of an HSA. HSAs are health insurance hacking for the people that have, like you say, the cash flow, the sinking fund to cover high deductibles and copays and costs associated with healthcare. If you can't do that and you need that safety net, you just can't hack an HSA.
Yeah.
Like we tout in the FI community. I fully agree with you. And I think about the consumerism of healthcare where, oh, am I really going to find anything? Should I really go? Oh, I can figure it out on my own. I really don't need that second look. It's not good because you let money be a barrier to taking care of yourself. And that does happen with an HSA.
And then there's a part of me that's like, well, dang, I'll just rub some dirt on it and get up. Isn't that what we're supposed to do when we fell down when we were kids? Let's just rub a little bit of dirt on that. It's just bleeding a little bit and we're tougher. I've got scars all over my knees to prove it. So what wound up happening is then I changed industries again and I helped build a company up from 5 to about 120. And I set up every operations department and that was all self-learned. Like they would just toss actions over the fence and say, we need to do this. And I'd go figure it out. So for the folks here that are going to reinvent themselves, I'm not going to say that it's impossible. It's not impossible to reinvent yourself at all. You can do it at any age. The question is, do you want to? Is it worthwhile? And can you take a little bit of time? So when I made less money going into this new industry when I started to come out of my hibernation and healing period than I did when I got divorced. I took it was a huge pay cut and I couldn't negotiate higher because the person who was starting up this company was like, she liked me, but I think I was also an unknown quantity and they probably didn't have the cash flow. So I think it took me about, 10 years before I could get that salary up to almost 100K, almost. And you're probably wondering why I mentioned that because we talk a lot about, like in the FI community, about couples on the journey to FI. And we talk about singles on the journey to FI on a younger level. So I want to talk a little bit about single player FI. So if you're single and you're going through this, especially for us older folks, the Gen Xers, the boomers, the elder millennials, some things to think about as you're single playing this whole thing. You don't have the economy of scale. You don't have two people coming in and paying your mortgage or your housing costs. It's not like I need double the house, right, for another individual in my life. So maybe your path is going to take a little bit longer. And I urge you to think about what the value is to sacrifice or up your savings or do more house hacking or increase your income. What are you willing to trade off in order to reach FI faster? I'll be honest. When I first did my first retirement calculator in my 20s, I looked at the number it came up with and it was like in the millions. And I'm like, I'm never retiring. I'm just going to work until I'm dead. And that was my mantra for years because there was no way that $1 million, and I understood compound interest. I like math. That compound, I'm like, that's not going to happen. Why bother to save? And after all the financial trauma I had, I'm like, why bother to save? They took the house. And I have to say, that's one of the reasons why I'm not really pro on paying the house off. Because until I make that last payment, the house isn't really mine. And if I pay off and I sink all this money to pay off the house in advance, I'm not going to be able to eat my drywall. So for me, investing is key and cash flow is king.
I'm sorry. The image of eating drywall kind of gives me a little.
I can't eat my drywall.
Can't eat your drywall. Yeah. Now, in those circumstances, and I reserve the right to change my mind as our circumstances change. Exactly. And that's the thing. People, you're on this path. It doesn't mean that you just set your blinders down and you're like, this is the only way. I've got to stick on this plan. Life happens. We can shift. You can change your mind. You can question what you're doing now. And so, in fact, when I got the new job in the new company, I didn't put any money in retirement because I'm like, I'm not going to work until I'm dead. I cannot reach that number. I need to have enough money in cash so that I have some safety. And I wound up living with someone who wound up being my long-term boyfriend. And so I paid him. He made twice what I made, but we split all the household expenses in half. which meant that I really had no money, extra money to really save or invest. But I was super lucky in the sense that I had someone who actually shared that. But back to single player FI, there are things that you and I have to think about. Like, even if you have children, and I know you have your daughter, Jackie, I know you have kids too, Bill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have
Absolutely.
kids. I have nibblings.
And we have a large audience, actually. I wanted to say, I think we have a significant audience that have suffered divorce and are in single player FI. So what you have to say on this subject is important to a significant portion of our audience. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. So on single player FI, it's going to be tougher. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It might take a little bit longer. Your pace is your pace. Do not compare your journey with someone else. Please don't. It's the comparison and finding yourself lacking that will drive you nuts. But here are the things that I would urge you to consider. How can you increase your income? How can you economize? And what are you willing to economize on? Because the pursuit of FI is not about deprivation. And I'm going to tell you, when I found FI, and I'll tell you when, I was living, my expenses, the amount of money that I had was discretionary per month was like $40. That was for eating out. That was for anything fun. That was for a book. You cannot buy stuff with $40, right? And I felt really deprived, but it actually supercharged my accounts and allowed some of the timing. But my income increased. So how do you, I'm going to ask you, is there a way you can increase your income? And side hustling, I don't know about you. I'm getting tired. I don't know how many more side hustles I want. So let's do the easy thing first. Let's prepare you to get a raise if you're still employed. If you've got a business, let's prepare a case to scale your business to bring in the income you need. Let's prepare your resume, build an argument for your manager. If you have a good manager, they want you to succeed. They want to keep you. They want you to be recognized. And if you don't have an attentive manager, let's make it hard for them to look away and do the hard work for them. Show them why you deserve the bonus, why you get that raise. So let's talk about, so those are the things I would urge. The other is that I'm a single player that has decided to live in San Diego. There are articles that show that this is now the #1 most expensive city in the country to live in. I'm like, holy cow, I am so lucky. And I know the FI community is all about geo arbitrage. You got to leave, you got to move to a lower area. And that is a really great strategy. So for those of us who are single, for those of us who are catching up, I'm going to suggest the following things. Come up with contingency plans. Because the other thing that came out of my financial trauma was I had contingency plans. I had a homeless plan. What would happen if everything hit the fan again and I didn't have a place to live? I was jobless. What would I do? And so I had it all listed down. This is my contingency plan. And I called it my homeless plan. The ChooseFI San Diego group here that I lead, most of them that have met me know about my homeless plan, and they all laugh at me. They're like, you can come and stay on our couch. I'm like, I'm not staying on your couch. That's so rude. My friends on the couch. But I just cherish their open-endedness, right? But I have this whole plan. So come up with contingency plans. Don't let yourself spiral downward. If you are, come up with your safety nets. For me, my safety net during COVID time and isolation was when I realized that this was really a challenge. I lined up with some friends for daily check-in or screen mirroring so I can get some work done in focus. I would do check-ins. I also told a couple of people that if you don't see me post anything, please just think about me and send me a text, and I'll do a proof of life. So there's lots of things you can do in terms of setting up plans that help structure and provide your own safety. And yes, they do require other people. So now the homeless plan still exists. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell my friends. It still exists. But all my friends are appalled. But it's actually rolled into my IPS, my investment, and I call it a philosophy statement, but the real thing is policy. So what does that mean? My IPS has, when will I draw out of an emergency fund? What would I do? How do I divest if I need to? How am I planning to invest? What's my long-term strategy and what my timeline is? But in the end, it's got this thing like, oh, if you're going to leave work by this year, because I'm also future planning, right? If you're leaving work this year and you need to draw down, what would you do? At what point? What are the different levels where you're going to have to pull down your money? And actually, that's what I wound up doing in 2019 when I left my toxic job. I left my toxic job before a year was up.
Wow.
A Gen Xer just said before a year was up. You're Bill. You're like, what's the problem with that, right? Your eyes are bugging out.
I know. I'm sorry. You can't see my face, so I'll just give you a.
Okay, so I don't know about you people, but I always heard you had to always stay with a company for a year, right?
Yeah, that's our
That's not
generation.
true.
I mean, I was at my company for 20 years, and now you stay at a company for a couple
Yeah,
years and
yeah.
you're out to get more money.
Oh,
So it sounds like you launched yourself from this corporate arena. Why did you do that, and what happened next?
well, I launched myself because it was really okay. So one, I'm still maxing out all my accounts. I'm grateful to be in a place right now where I'm actually going to put a pin on that, Bill, because I just realized I didn't complete my thought about my choosing to live in a higher cost of living area. I chose to live in a higher cost of living area, not because I love spending the money, but because my family's here. And despite all my family past, they're my family. And I still want connections to my nieces and nephews. And I want to be here for the future generation. So sometimes it's not practical to migrate. But I'm going to tell you, as a part of my level of planning, that is a contingency plan I reserve, that I can actually move to another cheaper location if have to. In fact, if I sell the house right now, I would be at FI. If I sell the house now, I still need to live. I couldn't live in San Diego. I'd have to move someplace else that's much cheaper. But there are reasons why I've chosen. I like the weather here. Not that you guys can't see the weather, but it's beautiful. I could spend some time outside without dying of heat exhaustion or whatever. But my family's here. I have some community here, and I believe you can make community anywhere. You'll find people that are like-minded. But there are reasons why maybe FI does not require arbitrage. And moving.
Interesting. We did the geo arbitrage. We were accidental geo
Oh.
arbitragers, grateful ones because of our lifestyle inflation, and we've been deflating ever since about 2013, and it's made a big difference in our lives. But you have to, again, like Jackie said before, and to her point, you have to do within the FI community what applies to your own individual personal situation. And there are reasons, as long as we're conscious and intentional about them and aware of them and the opportunity cost associated with them,
Yeah.
we're going to be fine.
Yeah, and that's what I have to say, that that's part of that conscious spending and then looking at the opportunity cost. I chose not to have a roommate in the time that I've had. I can rent out my room. Now, is that something I would do if I were in a crunch? You betcha, bottom dollar I would. But I was willing to absorb the opportunity cost of not having that income, to protect my peace, to protect my privacy, because again, home is about safety and security, right? That's the thing I know about myself. My biggest fear was being homeless. So does that mean I am going to own all my life? Maybe, maybe not. But definitely, you've got to think about why you're doing something. Conscious spending. Where am I going to put those $2 bills? Hopefully never. Maybe I'll get one someday, Jackie. But maybe
I know we got to get you one
maybe.
for sure, Jen.
Come visit me.
Actually, it's probably a good idea. Every guest on the show
Yeah,
should
they
probably
should.
get a $2 bill as part of the club.
You know, I would be very happy if you just come to visit me. I mean, or
Look,
if I were
that is
willing enough to
now
come and
on my
visit you, I
bucket
would do it.
list.
Okay, well, just let me know when. We can plan it out for 2024.
Well, you're a big proponent of the San Diego ChooseFI community, and I'm sure it's pretty large there.
Yeah.
So we could all come to a meeting. right?
Well, and I'll be honest, since COVID, one, I caught COVID last year, and now I've been struggling with long COVID for the last year and a half, roughly. I guess it'll be a year and a half at the end of December. But I don't have the energy. Like right now, I have energy because it's very short. I'm with you, but it literally will take me days to recover if I do outside events. So I have neglected my in-person community in San Diego, trying to encourage other people to set up events. But if you come, I will make a desperate attempt to set it up. I might not be able to stay the last minute, but FOMO is real. And I have to admit, community is valuable and I miss them. So I'm hoping to get healthy, and actually I'm changing my language. I'm getting healthy, and I will resume meetings in 2024. How's that for like creative visualization, right?
I love
it.
That's my intention.
I love it. You just set a goal.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about what Jennifer Ma now looks like. We heard about exiting the corporate world. I'm going to take your pin and put it back in it. What has the last few years of journey been for you? What are you doing now? I think it's
Oh,
fascinating.
well, I don't know if it's that fascinating, but here's some things. So I left the corporate world and I didn't have a plan other than the fact that everyone should pursue financial independence, because even if you don't achieve that goal number that everyone has in their head, you'll have benefits anyway. Here are the benefits. I hadn't reached FI, nowhere near my goal number, but I had my FU money. And if you haven't learned what FU money is, I'll send a link to Bill so you can put it in the show notes. But everyone needs a little FU money. That FU money allowed me to leave a toxic situation. It allowed me to travel before COVID hit. I set up my coaching business. I freelanced, and I have an opportunity fund in addition to my FU money that I could have drawn down. And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect money person, because I'll tell you, I did think about drawing down that money, and I had a whole plan. I had a business plan. I had a board of directors of Gen Ma that were close friends that I was open about my resources to say, here's what I'm trying to do. And I told them what my fish and cut bait scenario would be, like how long would I give myself to freelance. And the funny thing is, old demons come back. Security, safety. So I still do freelance on the side, still coach, and I have a full-time gig. And the funny thing is, I took the full-time W-2 gig because it felt safe. But the irony is this: I was already prepared to earn less income, because at that point in 2019, I looked at my numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, not only do I have FU money, but I'm at CoastFi. So CoastFi, in case you don't happen to know, and I'm pretty sure our hosts know, is where you have enough investments in your accounts that through normal and average compounding, you will reach your FI number by normal Social Security retirement age. And I had planned my Social Security retirement age, even though I'm an elder person, to not include Social Security. But the reality is that of our generation, we're going to get something. Whether it's 70%, it's going to be the sprinkles on my cake of joy, right? So I looked at that number and I'm like, oh, I can actually afford to experiment with entrepreneurship. So I did a lot of different things. And it was not incredibly lucrative. I did not make six figures. Surprise! But I didn't need to, right? I just needed to cover my bills. But that fear demon popped up and said, ooh, W-2 opportunity, different area. So I went back from corporate operations, I'm now back into software management, if you will, or configuration management. Isn't that funny? I've done a whole bunch of different things. And what's interesting about that is that I also had contracts that were lucrative that would have put me at six figures if I were willing to freelance in contract writing and proposal management for government contracts. And that was I didn't allow myself to experiment.
Well, look how far you've come. I mean, let's celebrate the Gen Ma of today. I mean, you are so inspirational. Your story is so inspirational. You've overcome unbelievable adversity, and you're at CoastFi. I mean, you did this, and
Help.
you did it not necessarily completely by yourself, but you had to pull down deep and bootstrap your resources. But you are at CoastFi, and you're going to retire on time, even though you got a late start.
Yeah.
This is the message we want to tell our audience. And you were talking today, Jen, to 4,000 to 5,000 people. What would you tell your younger self that you mighta, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and what would you tell our audience that they need to know from your experience?
All right. So don't let perfect get in the way of getting started, period. Right? I can't max out this account. I don't know the perfect investment strategy. Oh, there's only a target date fund. Oh, this target date fund that I have in my employer has got an expense ratio of 1%. Something is better than nothing. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $1. Something is better than nothing, and you'll be better off. Because that proverb about when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? I mean, I don't have a time machine. None of us do. So I would say, one, be kind to yourself. please, please, please take a look at the things that you think were the biggest financial mistakes you've ever made, and forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for the status you're in right now. If you've got debt, if you are late on payments, if your credit score is in the, not ideal, forgive yourself. Let it go. If you need to write a letter, maybe I should give you a separate account that I set up just for this, where they can write me a letter and give me their FI confession. And I will help them. Just forgive yourself. And then let's move on. Let's make a plan. And you, no matter who you are, you're wealthier than you think, because it's not just about net worth. It's not just about the money or the income you make or even what you keep. You, my dear, my lovelies, you've got your skills, your knowledge, your support system. Who do you know? Your friends. What resources are intangible? Do you have a great artistic eye? Do you have social capital? How are you engaged in your community? And I know that you've heard me, if you've ever heard me talk about things that matter, people matter. Money next. People matter. Your community is important. And I'm going to urge you, 20 years younger person to now, build your community, build your network before you need them. Because it was so surprising when I got laid off in 2018 from my long-term corporate job. I had people that I had just sent out an email saying, I'm no longer with this company. You could reach me at this. I had phone calls before I left the parking lot asking me, do you need a job? Do you need a job? Do you need a job? I've got a link. I didn't expect that at all. The kindness of people. Don't underestimate the fact that the world really wants you to succeed. It is not a competition. I'm not competing against you. I'm competing against my own personal flawed self. That gross person who yesterday, the mistakes I made. I want to be the next best version of Jen. So I always tease people about the fact that I'm Jen 2.0, but really I'm Jen 2.x. I'm constantly trying to reinvent myself, not because I want to impress anyone else, but I just think I want to be the best person I can. So it is not too late. Get started now. Don't let perfect get in your way. Evaluate your resources, both physical, but emotional, mental, social network, your skill sets, because those things could be leveraged. They could help you as you achieve your next goal, whether emotionally, physically, monetarily, right? And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be me. Don't be a Jen. Don't try to suffer in silence and muscle through this sucker because really there's no sense, right? And I'm passionate about the fact that we've got to shine a light on this stuff, because by casting light on these shadows, and doing the shadow work of becoming who we were meant to be, we are miracles. I kid you not. The electrochemical, DNA, all the things that make up who you are, your thought process, it's unique. You're a miracle. So you can start acting like one, right? So forgive yourself for those mistakes and go and shine, because I know you can. And whether or not we retire today, tomorrow, my net worth is not that person's net worth. I'm spending on this, that person's making that. None of my business. I applaud everyone's success. You tell me you make $50 million this last year. I'm like, good for you. I don't have any envy. I'm just happy for that individual. And if you get a raise and I didn't get a raise, I'm still going to celebrate your win. This is not a competition, people. We can all help each other out. We all have things to learn from each other. Read, take in, double check your sources, listen to valued, credible people that have no agenda to sell you crap. And you can do it.
Well, you are a wealth of information, and you've provided such value to our audience today. You had a list of resources you wanted to share with them, and maybe we should go through that now.
Oh boy. On my path to FI, and I didn't find FI until after I bought my house. And after I bought my house, my boyfriend decided not to come and live with me, which meant, holy cow, could I afford this in San Diego, right? The horrors. So I read a whole bunch of different things. And so I would say Dough Roller podcast really helped me out. when Rob Berger was behind the helm. He's doing awesome work at robberger.com. Stacking Benjamins, their podcast is sort of a variety show. It's sort of a really great way of looking at money. Afford Anything, ChooseFI. Who else did I listen to? There's Earn and Invest. There are a whole bunch of people I follow and listen to. I also really love calculators. I am a little bit of a math nerd. So I love Portfolio Visualizer. I love the calculators that help you calculate your FI number. So, for instance, cFIREsim is a great calculator that's free. If you're willing to pay or you want to try their 2-week trial, new retirement tools are completely robust, but there's some really great tools. And I'm such a money nerd that I still go back and test out everything like Fidelity, Vanguard's calculators. I test them all out because I'm like, and there's a part of me that still wishes I could have 100% success rate. But the reality is that's not going to happen. Again, safety and security, right? So I've got to know that my plan at 92% success rate is going to be okay.
There was one particular resource that you wanted to mention, and it may take another whole episode with you to really dive into it. But there's a book that means a
Oh,
lot to you, and maybe share a nugget or two from that book that you wish to share with our
okay.
audience.
So I read a book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, and I thought it was a great book, but I have to say that I think that book was actually written for a much younger generation. I would say if you're in your 20s, this would be a book that we would want to look at. And for us, I have some criticisms on the minor side. I think that there's still good things you can pull out of it. One, I think the book is very ageist. It sort of assumes that after you reach a certain age, we're going to fall apart and we won't be able to do stuff. Right? That's the feel you get when you are reading through this book. Two, it's ableist. Could we all go back to work? Maybe. Maybe work's going to look a little bit different. Maybe we can't go back to work because of physical or mental disability. Who knows? Accidents happen. But some things that he doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about long-term care planning, longevity planning for yourself. But the things that I really enjoyed about the book, memory dividends, right? Again, we've all heard spend money on experiences. They bring joy. I love the idea of building up a memory bank where I can pull that out and remember that moment, like this moment with you guys. And I'm probably going to be a dork and take a screen capture of all three of us on screen. So it'll come up next year that you and I had this conversation, right? And that'll make me smile. So his memory dividends, I think, are great. I disagree with him delaying retirement contributions until their 30s, that they should spend their 20s out and about, because I'm going to tell you that's not feeling good either. But we all know compounding.
Well, it's a great book
It is fun.
in its own
It is.
way. I certainly don't agree with all of its premises, and I appreciate your criticisms because it gets touted as a perfect book, but I don't think it is either. It has its own imperfections too and shortcomings.
Yeah.
At any rate, Jen, this has been a whirlwind tour of your life. It's been moving, it's been touching, it's been instructional, it's been supportive, it's been inspirational. I think our audience is really going to resonate with your story. Where can they reach you if they need to, for one reason or another, whether it be for a personal challenge or a financial challenge?
Well, I have a website set up and there's a ynylcoaching@gmail.com. I did that off the top of my head and can be somewhat dyslexic sometimes. So let me make sure I send that to you correctly. But I do have an email account. I may send up a special email account for just your listeners. If they want to email me and talk about the issues that haunt them, it is so freeing to let that go. It is so freeing to let that shame go, the embarrassment go. And I hope that after you listen to this, that you are lighter in spirit and emotion. And so you can go on.
Yeah, I
And be
can
that
say
miracle.
that I am, Jen. Like just your voice and the way that you are just so open and willing to share, it definitely is contagious. And it makes people want to think
Oh,
about their own situation, their own adversities, their own trauma, and be more willing to share it with the people that you trust. So this was very meaningful to me. And Bill, I appreciate you and Becky allowing me to join you guys as we have this conversation with Jen. It was just very special. I knew we've known each other for years. We 5 people travel in the same circles. So if you're part of the Catching Up to FI community, you're always invited to any meetups, and you've got a great family here. So that really matters. And so
Yeah.
to kind of spend this time with you today, it meant a lot to me. And I know a lot of the Catching Up to FI community too.
And Jackie, Bill, thank you. Jackie, it was such a great surprise to see you here. It's been joyful. Thank you. And thank you for your support and good cheer. I love your smile and your spirit. Bill, as always, I'm always going to cheer you on, buddy. And I count my blessings having met you at
Thanks.
FinCon 2019. Someday I'll be back at another FinCon. It will not be this year since I'm not well enough to travel. But I want to let you know, I'm in the Catching Up to FI community as well. I enjoy the posts. And when I have time, I try to chime in. If your listeners would like to also join that Facebook group and they want to tag me in a post, I might even set up a post the day that, with your blessing, to ask about their shame, because maybe since I've disclosed all of mine, the things I should be embarrassed about.
As you've told us today and illustrated quite well, life is so little about money and so much about our personal wealth, which I mean health in general, in its most global terms.
Yeah.
And in that regard, if you, with your deference, I'll say, we've talked about suicide today. It's impacted my life. It's impacted my kids' lives. I've had a colleague take her own life the day after I worked with her. My sons have had friends that have taken their lives. I want to give you a little bit of hope, and one avenue that you can avail yourselves of or help somebody else avail themselves of is a suicide hotline. Just dial 988.
I love that line.
Or check out 988lifeline.org.
Yep.
That's 988lifeline.org. Please realize that the cure for suicide is to not be alone.
Yeah.
And to reach out or have others reach out to you. It's in not being alone and finding a community and growing your community that you will realize the worth that you already have.
Yeah.
I have a few calls to action for our audience. We'd love for you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please leave us a speak pipe via the contact link on the website and put your comment or question on the show. Buy one of our recommended financial library on the website via our affiliate links. Check out the blog on the website. A lot of Becky's posts are there, and submit a guest post so we too can tell your story and share your wisdom. Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you on Catching Up to FI. Jackie, I want to thank you for sharing some time with us again today. I hope to see you guys again soon.
Yeah, we will.
in
This
person.
was amazing, Bill. Jen, we have to get together
Thank
soon.
you.
And
Thank
it
you
was
so
such
much.
a pleasure to have you today.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you on Catching Up to FI next week.
Yeah. You're loved. Just want to let you know.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to FI. We would appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review so that our message can reach others.
We are not lawyers, financial advisors, accountants, or tax experts. Please consult your own professional advisors before making any important decisions. Our content is for entertainment and education purposes only.
We'll see you next time on Catching Up to FI.